Evolution, biological evolution in particular, is actually a fact. It has been proven by science using the scientific methodology, using experiments and different forms of evidence that throughout history of the Earth, organisms have evolved from a very simple beginning to the complexity we see today and diversity we see today. And evolution is actually happening as we speak now, in different species and different places all over Earth. So it is a fact. It's not a theory, because usually a theory is something you test and you try. It may be correct, it may not be correct, until it is proven. But also we have to take into consideration science is always changing. So what we know today, in the circumstances today, in the scientific methodology today, evolution is a fact. But we don't know what new discoveries may come in the future to evolve our understanding of the process of evolution and the different mechanisms that are in place to explain the diversity in biology. So the evidence from the world around us has proven that evolution, biological evolution, is a fact. It's happening all the time. And we have, as scientists, we come up with different proposals to explain the mechanisms behind the processes and the facts that we see. These processes, these mechanisms that we propose may be valid today within the evidence we have, but they may also change, develop according to any new evidence that we may encounter. Similar to any model that scientists propose to explain a physical or biological phenomena that we actually can see and measure using the tools of science that we have today. So in the past, the evidence that was available among scientists was either fossil evidence or morphological evidence or embryology. These were our sources of evidence to prove that evolution is a fact and it's actually happening. But even these sources of evidence are sometimes not complete, like the fossil evidence, and people sometimes use that as in an argument against the fact of evolution. But now, with the advancement of molecular biology and genetics and the discovery of the DNA and all the following fields that have been opened up, we now have between our hands the absolute evidence that evolution is a fact and it's happening now. And this evidence is actually inherent in the DNA that makes up all living organisms. So every organism, from as simple as a bacteria or a virus to as complex as a human being, are made from the fundamental molecule, which is DNA, made of 4 nucleotides, C, T, G, A, and these sequences of nucleotides contain inside them all the information that is needed to create any organism that we exist now or has existed in the past. Now, when you look at the evidence that shows that all these organisms in their extreme diversity, that they come from one origin, you compare the similarity in the sequence of a particular protein in different organisms. So, for example, we can take a protein like cytochrome C in a human and compare it to that in a primate, or compare it into a mouse, or in a frog, or in a plant, or even in bacteria. We find that the similarity is very, very much. There are certain areas that are very much conserved among the species, and this is proof that we all originated from one simple origin, and that each line of organism developed according to the environment around it, so that it can survive, future generations can survive better in this new environment. But that's the ultimate evidence. Okay, so as I said, evolution is a fact. And so, and it is the process that explains how all the different organisms came to be existing on Earth today. And human beings are just another species among these different organisms that have existed or are existing today. So we cannot, as biologists, as scientists, exclude the human species from the grand, let's say, nature of creation that God made. Human beings are part of this creation, so they are part of the process, and they are a product of evolution in that sense. So if certain people use verses in the Quran to argue against the evolution of humans in particular, what I think is that they shouldn't take things literally. The Quran is not a book of science that they should follow. They should look at the hard evidence we have in science that explains things according to scientific methodology and scientific facts. And if they apparently see a contradiction between the religious text and what science is presenting, they should go back to their religious predictions and try to reinterpret it if it makes them feel better in order to accept what science is actually presenting on the table, that human evolution is just part of the grand plan, part of the process of nature in developing the different organisms we see today. And I also would like to add that human evolution is very controversial, and Allah in the Quran told us to beware of this. Because we are arrogant and we think that we should be the most important. And how can we, as human beings, come from that us and the chimpanzees to have one origin? And to me, the Quran reminds us, do not fall into that trap. We should not be arrogant. We are part of Allah's creation. So we, the chimpanzees, the bacteria, we are all part of this plan. And we should be humbled to accept this rather than being arrogant and say, no, we are different. So who was Adam? Nobody knows the answer to that. And certainly I will not take it, I do not have the answer to that. But what I propose is that, and this is my personal opinion, that Adam, that is mentioned in the Quran, is a metaphor, an example of humanity in general. Now, if I'm going to talk about what does it literally mean, how was Adam created as such, like on a very, exactly what happened in history, I do not have that knowledge, and neither does anyone have that knowledge. However, this is an open area for research, for searching for the truth. What does it actually mean? What does the Quran mean? But as a scientist, to me, humans evolved like other organisms. There was a gradual development of the human species, the Homo sapiens, that came out from previous species or subspecies, as we see today in viruses and bacteria. But it was extended over a very long period of time to produce what we now know as the Homo sapiens. And even Homo sapiens are still developing and evolving, but because we only live in a very small scale of time compared to the time it took for humans to evolve, we'll probably never see something within the lifetime of humanity, maybe. We don't know. But that's my explanation about Adam. Probably, that's why I said it's a metaphor, that Adam is a representative of a group of human beings that evolved. And when we say evolved from their previous ancestors, we're talking about cognition development, abstract thinking, the development of the conscious. So yes, very much so. It could be this group of people evolved for this higher mental capabilities and higher cognition. If you want to call it spirit, I mean, because we don't understand it, we cannot actually describe it very well. We don't have the definition of it. But to me, this is also another huge area to explore, because we don't now, even as scientists, we don't understand how the brain works. What is cognition? What is conscious? What is this abstract? What is the soul? We don't understand these things yet. And this is a whole new field that we can explore to try to understand. And the more we understand it, the more we can actually answer that question. What do we mean by Adam, and what did he or that group of people actually represent in the process of evolution throughout the millennia?
Dieu étant Ar-Rahman, le miséricordieux, ne peut donner l'existence à de nombreux univers avec des propriétés. Beaucoup de gens pensaient que c'était des routes pour les militaires et les marchandises
et puis les pèlerins, point. Eh bien non, ce sera aussi la route du savoir. La route des savoir-faire et la route des savoirs savants.